Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into something totally different this time? We're going to be exploring this wild idea called network states.
Network states. Yeah, it's basically this mind-blowing concept that technology could actually help us create entirely new countries.
Not bound by the old rules of geography and border. So we're talking digital nations built on shared values and goals. Our guide for this trip is the book, The Network State. And it's a total head trip.
It really makes you question everything you thought you knew about how societies are formed and how power works.
Totally. Okay, so the book starts off with this idea of history as this kind of crazy, unpredictable ride. But then it throws this curveball and says that tech, especially stuff like Bitcoin and its whole blockchain thing, could actually change how history is recorded.
It's like, imagine a history book that's not just written by the victors, right? But one that captures all the little details, the everyday stories of people, the stuff that usually gets left out.
A people's history, almost.
Yeah, exactly. But not just any people's history, one that's tamper-proof and verifiable because it's all recorded on the blockchain. The author calls this crypto history, and it's a really powerful concept.
Because suddenly you've got this, objective record of what happened. No more spin, no more propaganda, just the raw data.
And that ties into another key idea from the book, the difference between political power and what the author calls technological truth.
Okay, break that down for me.
So for centuries, governments and institutions have basically controlled the narrative, right? They decide what gets taught in schools, what stories get told. They shape how we see the world.
And they have a vested interest in maintaining that control.
Exactly. But the internet and tech in general, it's like this giant wrench thrown into their carefully crafted machine.
Because suddenly, information can come from anywhere, and anyone can share their perspective. It's a lot harder to control the narrative when you've got millions of voices chiming in.
Right. And the book is this fascinating example comparing how the U.S. and China present certain historical events in their textbooks, completely different versions of the same story, depending on what suits their current political agenda.
Which is kind of terrifying when you think about it. What else are we being told that's not entirely accurate?
It's a bit unsettling, right? But it also shows the potential of technology to empower people to uncover those hidden truths for themselves. We're not just talking about history here, but about how power operates in the digital age.
It's like tech is giving us this new lens to see through the BS, to question the narratives we've always been told and find our own answers.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective, that's what lays the groundwork for the book's really radical idea that maybe, just maybe, we're witnessing the emergence of a whole new way of organizing society.
Okay, now you got me hooked. What's this new way of organizing society?
Well, the book introduces this fascinating concept of three leviathans that have shaped human civilization: God, state, and network.
Leviathans. The sea monsters.
Well, you'll have to wait till next episode to learn about the leviathans and what they represent.
Okay, leviathans. So we're not talking about actual sea monsters here, are we?
Not quite. Haha. Think of them more like these massive forces that have shaped human civilization.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So who are these metaphorical leviathans?
You've got God representing religion and faith. Basically, the idea that there's a higher power calling the shots, setting the rules for how we live our lives.
Makes sense. And then there's state, right?
Exactly. Governments, institutions, the whole nine yards, they're all about maintaining order, enforcing laws, whether we like it or not.
Keeping things running, or at least trying to.
Right. And then you've got this new kid on the block, the network. This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, the network. Lay it on me.
So the network represents this interconnected world we live in now. The internet, crypto, social media, all these decentralized systems that are kind of exploding in influence.
So it's like this massive evolving thing that's kind of hard to define, but we all know it when we see it?
Exactly. And what's fascinating is the book argues that we're seeing this decline in trust in the old Leviathan's God and state. People are losing faith in traditional institutions.
Yeah, you see that everywhere. Less and less trust in governments, in the media, in big institutions in general.
Right. And at the same time, the network is gaining more and more influence. Think about it. When was the last time you read a news article and just took it at face value?
Honestly, never. You always got to check multiple sources to see what people are saying online. It's like everyone's become their own fact checker.
Exactly. And that's a direct result of the network. The book actually points to Trump getting banned from social media as a prime example of this power shift.
Whoa, yeah. Love him or hate him, you can't deny that was a huge deal. The most powerful man in the world, silenced by a few tech companies.
Exactly. It showed how even presidents aren't immune to the power of the network. And it's not just politics either. The rise of cryptocurrency like Bitcoin is another example of the network challenging the old guard.
Right, because it operates outside the control of governments and central banks. It's like its own thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's what makes those in power so nervous. They're scrambling to figure out how to regulate it, control it, because it threatens their authority.
So we've got this, like, three-way power struggle playing out. God and state versus the network. What does that even mean for the future? Does anyone even know?
That's the million-dollar question. The book argues that the network's rise won't just reshape countries. It has the potential to create entirely new ones.
Wait, entirely new country, like from scratch?
Yep. The book calls them network states, and they operate on a totally different set of rules. They're digital first, built on shared values, and a global network of like-minded people.
So less about physical borders, more about like shared ideals
Yeah.
and a digital community.
Exactly. It's like building a community online that's so strong, so vibrant, that it eventually spills out into the real world. And the book doesn't just, throw this idea out there. It actually provides a step-by-step plan for how to build one of these network states.
A step-by-step plan. Now you're speaking my language. So how do you actually go about building a digital nation? So you're telling me there's a step-by-step guide to building a nation in the digital age. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, it's pretty out there.
Yeah.
But the book breaks it down into 7 steps. It's surprisingly practical, like a roadmap for a startup, but instead of a company, it's, a whole country.
Okay, I'm all about a good roadmap.
Yeah.
What's step one? Where do we even begin with this whole network state thing?
It all starts with finding your tribe, building that strong online community, those people who are really aligned on a shared purpose, a set of values that really resonate. That's the foundation, right?
Gotcha. So it's not just about, like, getting a bunch of people together in a Facebook group. It's got to be more intentional than that.
Definitely. The book argues that successful network states need more than just like a catchy slogan or a cool website. They need a strong moral foundation, something that gives their citizens a real sense of belonging, a purpose beyond just like existing online.
Right, like those historical communities that managed to thrive because they offered something more than just, economic opportunity.
Yeah.
A shared sense of purpose, something bigger than themselves.
Exactly. The book even talks about the importance of a one commandment, a single defining principle that captures what this network state stands for, guides all its actions. It's a powerful concept.
I love that the one commandment, it really makes this whole thing feel more real, less like we're just talking about some, online utopia.
Yeah, exactly. And once you've got that strong foundation, that shared purpose, then you can start building out the rest, a digital economy, even crowdfunding physical territory.
Hold on. Back up a second. Crowdfunding territory. How does that even work? Are we talking about like buying an island on GoFundMe?
Uh-huh. Well, it's a bit more complicated than that, but essentially, yeah. The idea is that a network state could pool its resources to purchase land, maybe even an entire island where its citizens could live and govern themselves, put their ideals into practice in the real world.
So instead of the old way of doing things, countries defined by lines on a map, often acquired through, not so peaceful, means you've got this new model where territory is acquired through, well, basically crowdfunding.
Yeah, it's a totally different paradigm. And it's not just about buying land. It's about building a new kind of society, one that's designed for the digital age, governed by its citizens, and based on shared values.
Okay, so let's say, hypothetically speaking, a network state manages to pull all of this off. They've got their online community, a digital economy, even some physical territory. How does that actually challenge the existing world order? I mean, we still live in a world dominated by traditional superpowers, right?
Right, but that's where things get really interesting. The book argues that network states could completely upend the geopolitical chessboard. It envisions a future where you've got the U.S., China, and network states forming a tripolar world.
A tripolar... Okay, now you're just messing with me.
I'm serious. Imagine it like a three-way tug of war. You've got the U.S. representing like traditional media and the U.S. dollar as the dominant global currency.
Makes sense. And on the other side, we've got China.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With their model of centralized control and their rapidly growing economic power.
Okay, so those are our heavy hitters. Where do network states fit into this tug of war?
They're the wild card. They're not playing by the old rules, which is what makes them such a potential threat to the established order. The book uses Bitcoin and Web3 to represent them.
Bitcoin as a decentralized currency, Web3 as a decentralized internet.
Got it. So we've got this three-way power struggle with network states as the disruptor. What's at stake here?
The book suggests that the biggest conflicts in this tripolar world might not be about, like, military power or who has the biggest economy. It's going to be about which ideology shapes the future.
So it's less about bombs and tanks, more about ideas.
Exactly. Will it be the individual liberty championed by the U.S., the state-controlled capitalism of China, or this new model of decentralized, community-driven societies represented by network states?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. So in this crazy tripolar future, where do our individual choices fit in? That's the question the book leaves us with. In a world that's constantly being reshaped by technology, by shifting power dynamics, what kind of future do you want to be a part of? What values will shape the world you want to live in?
It's exciting and terrifying at the same time. This whole network state concept, it's definitely a mind bender.
For sure. But it's not just some abstract idea, right? It's a call to action. It's
Right.
about recognizing that we have a say in shaping the future, even if it seems like things are spiraling out of control.
That's a great point to end on. So for all you listeners out there, we want to hear from you. What do you think about network states? Is it a utopian dream? A recipe for chaos? Something in between? Head over to our social media, join the conversation. Let's keep this discussion going.
Absolutely. Because the future is unwritten, and it's up to all of us to decide what it's going to look like.
That's it for this week's Deep Dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay tuned.